Hey City Church kids! I wanted to start off today by having us remember that we've been talking about the fruits of the Spirit. And in a minute we'll sing our Fruits of the Spirit song. But if you remember, we had Charlotte kind of remind us last week what all the fruits were, and she drew that great little picture for us. If any of you guys want to do a picture or also teach a little bit about the fruits of the Spirit, feel free to send me a video. You can ask your parents to make a video and send it to me. We'd love to have you also do kind of what Charlotte did and just say hello and share a little bit about what you're learning about the fruits of the Spirit. But this week, we're going to be looking at the fruit of the Spirit called faithfulness. Faithfulness. And as we talk about faithfulness, we're going to sing our song. We're going to learn some cool geological facts. And we're going to learn a little bit more about how much God is faithful to us, no matter what we do.
The fruit of the Spirit's not a coconut. Fruit of the Spirit's not a coconut. If you want to be a coconut, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Oh, the fruit of the Spirit's not a banana. The fruit of the Spirit's not a banana. You wanna be a banana? You might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Oh, the fruit of the Spirit's not a watermelon. The fruit of the Spirit's not a watermelon. If you wanna be a watermelon, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Oh, the fruit of the Spirit's not a lemon. The fruit of the Spirit's not a lemon. If you wanna be a lemon, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Oh, the fruit of the Spirit's not a cherry. The fruit of the Spirit's not a cherry. If you wanna be a cherry, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Okay, everybody knows that grapes come in bunches, so everybody get in big bunches. The fruit of the Spirit's not a grape. The fruit of the Spirit's not a grape. You wanna be a grape, you might as well hear it. You can't be a fruit of the Spirit, cause the fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. The fruit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and gentleness, and self-control.
So what is faithfulness? Well, faithfulness is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So if you say you're going to clean your room and then you go clean your room, that's an example of faithfulness. Or if you say you're going to eat all of your vegetables and then you eat all your vegetables, you have been faithful to eat all your vegetables. So you can be faithful to things that you say you're going to do. And you can also be faithful to things that someone else tells you to do. For instance, if your parents ask you to clean up your room and you clean it up, then you're being faithful to what they asked you to do. In the same way, if they asked you to eat all of your vegetables and you did eat all your vegetables, then that would be being faithful to what they asked you to do. So faithfulness can be both doing what you say you are going to do, and also following through on what others have asked you to do. Now, faithfulness is such a big deal in the Bible because the Bible tells us that faithfulness is part of God. that God is faithful no matter what we do. He is a faithful God who loves us always, never giving up. And one of the main things about God's faithfulness is it happens on a regular basis. One of the things about faithfulness is that it happens regularly. So, for example, out west in America, there's a place called Old Faithful. Now, Old Faithful is what's known as a geyser. And a geyser is something where there's water in the ground that gets close to hot molten rock, hot liquid rock that's part of the center of the earth. And it heats that water up and it shoots the water up into the sky really high. And so when that water comes out of the ground all hot and steamy and just kind of like a big explosion of water, that's called a geyser. So out west in America, there's a geyser called Old Faithful. So I want to show you a video of what Old Faithful does, what it looks like. Here you go. Wow, wasn't that crazy? That was so high. The water just goes right up to the sky. And it does that every 45 minutes to 2 hours. It's very regular. So some people say you could set a watch by Old Faithful because every 45 minutes or so, the water comes out of the ground in that big spurt that you saw. That's why they call it Old Faithful, because it happens so regularly. Every 45 minutes, the water comes out. And so you can set your watch by Old Faithful. So that's what faithfulness is. It is having consistency. It is doing what you say you're going to do every time. And God is faithful like that. He has given us promises that He will love us always. And every time we sin or make a mistake, He will forgive us and welcome us back with His arms. And the good news is that that happens every time. Every time you make a mistake, God welcomes you back with open arms when you confess and repent, which are just two big fancy ways of saying that you ask God for forgiveness and tell Him that you're sorry. So that's what faithfulness is. But I also think that that there's a little bit more to it than that. See, not only is God faithful, God is the most faithful being. He's the most faithful thing in the whole universe. He's more faithful than trees every year when they predictably bring out their leaves. He's more faithful than the sun coming up in the morning. He's more faithful than the moon coming out at night. He's more faithful than the seasons changing every year. And you know why? It's because He makes all those things happen. He makes the sun rise and the moon come out at night. He makes the rains come when it's time, and He makes the snow comes when it's winter. He sets all the seasons, and He makes the tide water at the beach come in and go out. It's so predictable. It's so faithful of God to do all those things. The Bible tells us in Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 24, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will have hope in Him. Did you hear that? God's faithfulness is new every morning. Now, what that means is that whenever you mess up, whenever you make a mistake, the very next day, when the sun comes up and it's morning time, God has already given you a new mercy for the day. He already forgave you for yesterday's sin, mistakes. He already knew you were going to do that, and he already forgave you. Now the question is, how could that be? How could God forgive us for something that he knew we were going to do ahead of time? Well, that's where the story comes in. So let me tell you a story about God's faithfulness. A long time ago, there was a people called the Israelites. And they were a group of people who started out as slaves. Maybe you've heard of them before. But they were slaves, which means that they had to work very hard for no money. And they were very poor. And they were very oppressed. They had a lot of hard work and they were very tired. But God was faithful to them by getting them out of slavery. He freed them and broke out their chains and led them out of their place of bondage and captivity, out of slavery and oppression, into a new land filled with places that they could settle their families and plant gardens and create a whole new way of life, free from slavery. And what those people decided to do, instead of being thankful to God, they got angry at God. They said, "Why have you brought us out to this place only to let us die?" They were thinking God wasn't going to take care of them. And so they began to complain and be sad. Well, that didn't make God very happy. And so, but instead of God being angry with them, he gave them what they needed. He gave them water. He gave them food. He gave them leaders like Moses to get them to where they needed to go. And he provided for everything that they needed. But as time went by, the people began to forget God. And so God had to send new leaders for them. These leaders were called the judges. And the judges were kind of like Moses, but they made sure that the people listened to God. But what would happen is every time one of the judges died, the people would forget God again, and he would have to send a new one. Well, this went on for year after year after year, and God was getting weary. He was getting tired that the people kept forgetting him. And so he decided he was going to have to change things. So he gave them a king. And when God gave them a king, he thought that this would make them finally remember him forever. That was what he was hoping. But he also knew that that might not work. And that's what ended up happening. The people forgot God again, even though they had a king. So God decided, since he was so faithful, to send them some prophets. Now, prophets are people that remind the Israelites about God. And they did everything they could to remind the people that God was still there, that God still loved them, and that God still cared for them. But they forgot him even more. And so more time went by, and more years passed. And eventually God couldn't do it anymore. And he decided, I need to fix this once and for all, because everyone keeps forgetting me and forgets to follow me. So what he did was he sent Jesus. He sent Jesus to come and die on the cross for all the times that we forget God, for all the times that we make mistakes. And his death was so powerful that he not only died for the mistakes and the forgettings of all the people before him, but he died for all the people after him, just like you and me. We're those people. And so the answer to our question of how can God forgive our mistakes and welcome us with open arms before we even make mistakes is that he sent Jesus, and Jesus died so that those mistakes would always be forgiven. So the good news today is that God is faithful no matter what happens, no matter what you do, no matter what you forget, no matter what you make a mistake on, God will always be faithful to forgive you and to welcome you with open arms. But here's the secret. If you want to be faithful in your life, if you want to have the fruit of the Spirit called faithfulness, all you have to do is ask Jesus to give his Spirit of faithfulness to you. Just like all the other fruits of the Spirit that we've been studying, it comes the same way as all the others. Jesus gives it to us when we believe in him and when we ask him to give us the fruit of the Spirit called faithfulness.
I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart, down in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart.
What else you got?
I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart, down in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the wonderful love of my blessed Redeemer way down in the depths of my heart. Where? Down in the depths of my heart. Where? Down in the depths of my heart. I've got the wonderful love of my blessed Redeemer way down in the depths of my heart. Where?